also learning more about the suspect, Ronnie Davis, in the shooting. It was a Riverdale officer who identified the 30-year-old from a still image of CTA video showing his face. That officer had previously arrested Davis in connection with a misdemeanor. Davis has worked both security and home health care jobs, according to prosecutors. He also recently worked at a Taco Bell in Chicago, though it's not clear if he was currently employed at the time of the shootings. His public defender says Davis had a firearms owner's identification card for at least the last 3 to 4 years. Police have not said, though, if the gun used in the shootings was his gun. Joining us now is Anthony Riccio, former First Deputy Superintendent with the Chicago Police Department and now Director of Public Safety for Monterey Security. Anthony, thanks so much for joining me this morning. You know, we've been talking about this all week because it is such a horrific crime after those 4 people were killed on the Blue Line in an apparent random attack on Monday. You know, a CTA employee shot near a red line station the following day as well. So what do you think, based on all of your decades of experience, the city can do right now to protect riders and workers on public transit? You know, are they using all the tools at their disposal?
So that's a great question. I mean, if you look at what the CTA is doing now, they really do have a lot of things in place. Any security plan, think of your own home, for example. You have layers of security. You have a lock on the door. You may have security cameras. Inside the home, many people have safes. You have lighting outside. So a good security plan is all about layers of security. And the CTA is no exception. They have police officers riding a lot of these trains. And let's face it, there's no way they could ever put a cop on every train or a cop on every platform. There's just not enough police to go around. But they do supplement that with private security. They probably have one of the best surveillance, video surveillance systems that I've ever seen. Their cameras are HD, and in the murders in Forest Park, those cameras actually led to the arrest of the offender. So they are doing a lot, but there's other things that they can do as well. If you look at most crime on the CTA, not as horrific as what we saw in Forest Park, but you look at a lot of the crime on the CTA, almost all of it begins with a fare aversion. Somebody who jumps a turnstile, somebody who slips through. It's relatively easy to do. I've heard from so many people that you can reach your arm through, push a button, and the gates open up and you get on. And I think the CTA really needs to take a hard look at how these people are getting onto the platforms and getting onto the trains. And I think that's an important thing that maybe that they haven't been looking at. It's kind of an oversight. And I think they really need to look into that.
Now, I realize, you know, there's budget concerns. I realize there's personnel concerns. But to that point, does the CTA or the city need to do more in terms of putting security personnel or police officers at each platform to grab somebody right away, potentially, who does try to hop the gate?
Sure. I mean, that's a great point. If we could see a higher visibility, more police officers, which, you know, you hit the nail on the head. It's really all about the budget. But certainly they can ramp up security on these platforms, have the security officers riding more trains, be more of a visibility right at the entrance to these platforms. And that would be a huge thing as well. Recently, they rolled out AI, artificial intelligence system that they're combining with the existing video cameras. And I think that could be a big help as well. And that AI, and we're showing it right now, that AI basically identifies if someone's holding a gun or in possession of a gun. It notifies a control room that then looks at that video. And if they see that is in fact the gun, they notify police and get somebody out there right away. I think it's great. I'd like to see that expanded. It's another layer of that security that I was talking about. You just have to continue to layer things, and I think that could be a big help as well.
To that point, certainly all of those tools are a big help. But like what I hear from a lot of people, you know, and I use the CTA all the time actually too, is, well, that's all fine and well, but that's helping spot what could potentially be a crime, and then giving officers the ability to respond to a crime after perhaps it happens. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who say, I need to feel safe walking into the train or walking onto a bus. I don't want someone to come rushing after the crime has already occurred. How do you assuage those fears?
I mean, that's, again, a great point. That system, that AI system, identifies individuals on the platform if they produce the gun. If the gun is in their waistband, for example, or concealed in a backpack, that system does not help. It's another tool certainly that helps, but I think if I could wave a magic wand or say, one correction, one change that I'd like to see right now, I'd like to see them harden entry. The people that are committing these crimes on the trains, the people that are coming on and wreaking havoc, sometimes not even a crime. I mean, you could be sitting there on your ride on the CTA and you get approached by a group of kids asking for money to support their athletic team or something. And it's kind of intimidating for a lot of people. And it's certainly uncomfortable and it's not what you want. Those people, those kids, those people that are harassing people are not buying a Ventra card. They're not paying a fare to get on. They're defeating the turnstiles and they're getting on the trains. So if they can just harden the entry to the platform, harden entry onto those trains, I think that's going to make a big difference. So if I could wave a magic wand and say one change I'd like to see that I think will be really impactful, is harden those.
One more real quick question here. I wanted to also ask you, there was a point this year where the state of New York actually deployed the National Guard to the New York subway system. Is that something that the governor should ever consider or that the mayor should ever request, or are we not even close to having that be something that should be a possibility?
Sure. No, I don't think we're at that stage yet, certainly. I think it's a very manageable problem right now. The system needs a few tweaks for sure. But I don't think we're quite at the point where we need National Guard. I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't say we should never do it. It was very effective in New York, but it kind of adds a different feel to the city and a different feel certainly to public transportation. So for right now, I think just a few corrections, maybe look at hardening the entry, but kind of keep the National Guard on standby just in case this doesn't work.
Yeah, I hope that's never needed. Anthony Riccio, former First Deputy Superintendent with the Chicago Police Department, now Director of Public Safety, Monterey Security. As always, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dana.